Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Buddhist Biohacker. My name is Lisa Gunshore, your host and mystic guide, and we are ticking away towards 300 episodes since this podcast launched in 2020. So welcome in to everyone who's joining. We do have live comments, so please share where you're from, if you have questions, and even just how you're feeling out there in the world. I know the astrology for this summer is fiery, to say the least. And we are so excited to have a special guest with us today, Tim Sandars from Omnia. And Tim, welcome back. It's been a while. I'm so happy to have you back with us.
Great to be back. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to having a bit of a catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you have such a great energy and I love the products. I still have the stickers on all my devices. I still use them. Here we are. It's what, 5 years later since we first connected. Yes. And, you know, I love the product and I also just think you're amazing. So very happy to have you back. And what have you been up to?
I knew there was a reason for coming on this show.
Yeah,
to get a little bit of
great energy.
Tire pump.
Yeah. So well, before we even start with what's up, I guess I'll start with this, which is for everybody watching. Tim has gracefully decided to support our One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit for the month of July. And we'll share more information later in the show about that. But really excited about that and excited to have you a part of that as well, because we are in need of the healing. You know, these summits show up. Spirit asks me to do them. So I have no idea what we're in for this summer, but it seems like we're in for something or we wouldn't be doing this event. So
yeah, well, things are moving pretty fast, aren't they? You know, just as the sort of tyranny is like sort of, you know, going off the charts, then that's also bringing us, you know, in full force to combat it all and hopefully realign it all as well. So yeah, good on you. It's yeah, great to be part of it as well. I like the the One Heart, One Earth principles. It's great. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So what have you been up to? What has been happening? I was trying to think. I'm pretty sure the last time we did a show together was 2021 or 2022. So it's been a few years.
Not long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you up to and what's going on?
Well, recently had a bit of sort of upheaval. I've had to kind of move twice in a couple of months, and I'm now in a interesting situation with a lady who's kind of taken over a whole hotel and guest house kind of compound, and she wants to turn it into an event space. And you know, she's first of all quite religious, but also you know, spiritually minded as well. And she'll be looking to host some events here, which is exciting for her as well. So it's just a nice place to be around. It's probably a bit temporary for me, but it's a good place to be at the moment. And apart from that, we've just been doing the same old thing at Omnia, really. You know, still selling the product, still waiting for everyone to realize how important it is to take protection against electromagnetic fields. And I'm still banging that drum, still getting banned from, you know, certain, you know, channels, or having my videos banned, I should say, not personally banned, but you know, there's a whole kind of, you know, suppression of the truth going on, as I'm sure most of your viewers are aware of. And I'm always crossing that line. So especially when we advertise, you know, because every time we advertise, what generally happens is someone claims to have made a complaint about our adverts, even though they're completely vanilla. They're not, you know, offensive or, you know, they're not harsh in any way. They're just like, look, if this is important to you, come and check out our product, that kind of thing. Rather than, hey, you know, your phone is killing you or, you know, harming you or anything like that. We know that we have to tread carefully in terms of what we say. But, you know, every time we advertise, we have the Advertising Standards Authority come back and say, oh, we've had a complaint. And I say, who from? And they go, oh, I'm sorry, with GDPR, we can't tell you who it's from. And I'm like, well, how many? And they say one. And then they eventually start telling me that I have to remove certain words from my site. The last time they said, oh, you got to remove the word protection from your site. I'm like, I'm sorry. Do Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
There's 30,000 people typing in EMF protection every month to Google, and yet you've got the advertising standards people saying, "Oh no, you can't use that word on your website." I'm like, but there's loads of people looking for it, and it's just the world is just totally insane. And you know that goes back to what I was saying earlier on, where the tyranny is coming up here, and we are being asked to rise into that situation and just say, you know what, we need to clear this up. So that's in a nutshell what's been going on. Omnia is ticking over, but you know, getting into trouble.
Yeah. Well, it is amazing. I mean, I'm amazed at what I get strikes for and what shows up, because it's the thing you wouldn't think that you would get in trouble for. It's
Right.
kind of an amazing thing in that way. So I totally get it. It's like a battle to try to share the truth.
Mm.
And if you're not sensationalizing, it's difficult on here to make things go, because the truth,
Yeah.
most people don't want to hear that either. So I
Well,
know
that's
all of
it.
you listening and watching do, which is why you're listening and watching, but it definitely
Yeah.
makes it challenging.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, we've got this AI coming on board, which is, you know, something of a double-edged sword, and you know, everyone's got their opinion on it. I know that I don't fully trust it, but I also see everyone as a marketer and everything. You know, you sort of have to. If you don't do it, you get left behind. I hate thinking like that, but ultimately that's what's going on. But if you use AI to ask you about the harms done by phone radiation, for example, you get something nearing the truth. Whereas, you know, all those authorities are desperately trying to just say, don't, whatever, you know, you're not allowed to mention this, you're not allowed to mention that. And just as an aside for your viewers, just to say how crazy that situation is, when the Advertising Standards Authority come at me and say, you can't use this word, you can't use that word, and blah, 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 I say, do you know that there's like 10,000 peer-reviewed studies on rats showing that rats get everything from infertility to DNA strand breaks to cancers to heart problems to brain problems to, you know, serious stuff, not just, you know, a little sort of scratch on the skin kind of thing, you know, serious
Yeah.
stuff. And we'll get into why if you want, you know, because you know, it's been a while. I can
Yeah,
tell
let's
people
do
what
it.
I know, which is like, you know, really important to understand, which is that the sun's radiation is very different to phone radiation. And we need to understand why they vibrate in different ways. And this is all about vibration, and it's not about heat, which is what the physics world wants you to think it's all about, because then they can do a heat test on the phone and go, it's perfectly safe. But it's not about heat at all. It's about something else that people don't really understand, which is vibration. And once you get into the vibration of it all, then I feel that you have a lot of aha moments about healing in general and your health and even the makeup of the universe in general. Because it goes right down to the atom and what an atom really is, but also what a blood cell really is. We can get into that a bit later on. But basically, I said to the ASA, the advertising people, I said, have you seen these 10,000 reports on mice and rats showing that they get loads of diseases? And they said, oh, no, those don't count because they were done on rats and mice. I'm like, okay, but then you wouldn't have a pharmaceutical industry, you wouldn't have a makeup industry, you wouldn't have anything if you didn't test on rats and mice. So when did they suddenly become redundant? And you know,
Mhm.
it's just twisting the narrative to suit them, because they know they're talking absolute rubbish. And you
Mhm.
know, I just have to sort of play the game very reluctantly. So, you know, that's the kind of backdrop of what's happening, everybody, is that people are trying to block the truth from getting to you about phones. A, because there's masses of money at stake. You know, if you look at what happened to tobacco industry and, you know, being sued by people who got cancers and so on, there's just huge money at stake, and money talks, as we all know. Um, and B, I think they don't want you to harmonize it. You know, they don't want you to take action and you know, and keep yourself healthy, because that's profitable too. You know, your bodily demise is big
Well,
business as well.
Well, yeah, it's the plan, right? The plan is
Yeah.
diminish our
The
energy
evil
field.
plan,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see it. I mean, it's funny. I watched The Matrix, the OG first Matrix movie the other night, just for
Mm.
fun. And, you know, I don't care how many times you watch that, but every time you have your own consciousness shift, that movie has different meanings, I think, every time. And just
Yeah.
watching, I don't think I've watched it in, I don't know, 10 years or something. And watching it, it was like, oh man, like there's so much in there about what is really happening with us. And when we look around the world, we look at images of the 80s and what people looked like in the 80s versus what we look like today. And I just think it's so obvious when you look at the health differences, you know. And I think here in the United States, with RFK being a health advocate, that's allowing us to say a little more, but where we can go with that, I don't
I've
know.
got everything crossed for RFK. It's literally
Oh, same.
everything crossed.
Like, can we
Because he's the
really?
only one. He's the only influencer who's going to actually break the dam on this, right?
Yeah,
No one else will touch it. You know, if I
right.
were to, you know, if I were to ask like a sports person or something like, "Hey, do you want to endorse my product or whatever?" It wouldn't be long before they just went, "I can't touch this." You know, it's too dangerous or whatever. But RFK hopefully will burst the dam open on this because he's already sued the FCC and won. And for anyone that doesn't understand what's going on at the moment, right, you know, with the sort of suppression of the real information about phone radiation and its effect on animals, rats and mice and humans, we have a legal case where the FCC was sued for not looking at those 10,000 peer-reviewed studies on rats and mice by, you know, the Children's Health Defense, I think they're called, a group that, you know, that RFK was very much a part of. I'm not sure what role he plays anymore, but he was back then, and they won the case. And the judge said that the FCC had to respond and say why it, you know, what it's going to do in the future, why it didn't take these reports seriously, and what it's going to do in the future. That was in 2021, and since then, what's happened? Nothing. Literally nothing. And so we live in a world where it's like, if you're in trouble personally, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. But as soon as corporations are in trouble, they just kick the can down the road and wriggle out of it, and just there's no accountability at all.
Mhm.
So it's a really sort of, you know, flipped up world, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, like side question coming up here is, I'm curious, like, how do you stay motivated, you know, because it's tough for all of us who are fighting the fight for truth and consciousness and awakening and all these things. Like, how do you stay focused? What keeps you motivated? What, not even motivated, but like what keeps you uplifted?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I have had sort of, you know, ups and downs, you know, just personal ups and downs. Can I really be bothered to do this? Oh God, the ASA is onto me again, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like good months of sales, bad months of sales. But ultimately, I know that what I'm doing is helping people, and that is the most important thing to me. And if I look at what else I might be doing, it would be working with or for other people, which I don't mind. But ultimately I wouldn't sort of be in control of my own destiny, products, all that sort of thing, which is actually quite important to my lifestyle at the moment. So I, you know, every time I sort of get down like that, then occasionally, well, no, quite often actually, my customers come back and say, "Thank you so much for this product." And that's what really pumps my tires up. And it's like, okay, I am doing something useful, recognized, acknowledged, all those good things. And that's it really. It's like, you know, there's been a lot of challenges, you know, I won't bore you with all the details, but it's like, if you know you're doing the right thing and you know that's helping people, that can be the motivation that you need sometimes on a you know, a bad day. And then occasionally people just contact me out of the blue and say, "I'd really like to be a carrier for your product," and it's like, thank you, yeah. And you know, somehow it's getting through the whole kind of censorship gates and everything else. So and also, if you look at, I mean, the other thing that keeps me going is the fact that If you take 100 people off the street and you say to them, are you using any EMF protection? There's probably only 1 or 2 that would say yes, maybe 5. I don't know, but very, very, very few. And, you know, we've got that whole 95% to, you know, to try and get through to. And hopefully RFK will, like I said, break that dam open so that it has to be covered in the mainstream media. Because if he starts going on about it, they have to at least mention it, you know, and they always try and make out that you got a tinfoil hat on or whatever, you know, and I get so much abuse for selling snake oil and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, by very unimaginative people, obviously, you know, and robots.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how they try and condition the truth and you know, and force the narrative. So yeah, it's like, you know, good days, bad days, but ultimately, eventually, I think everyone's going to be looking, going, oh my God, I need to do something about this, right? And what's the best product? And I hope when that happens, then they'll see my product favorably, because it does test extremely well. And in fact, you've had a very good experience with it as well, with the Omnia products. So maybe you could just tell people about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can tell right now, like the biggest thing is when I am being bombarded by EMF, and you know, that can happen sometimes even just at home. I notice if it's like louder or not, but it really comes with my ears. So I get this, like, it's not tinnitus, but it's like this crazy buzzing in my ears that's really low pitch that happens when I have too much exposure. So even you know, being here with you on my computer, like talking through this, that can get intense. And so when I first used the product and put it on my devices, I noticed it was pretty much an immediate change with my ears and their buzzing. So, and that's something that was really bugging me. So that's definitely like a very physical, direct experience that I've had with the product. There's also an energy to it. I mean, you do notice the energy. For people like me who notice subtle energies and can see auras and things like that, it definitely shifts the vibration. So we have them on all of our kids' devices. We have them on our devices. And the thing is, like, my kids have phones and iPads and laptops. And so do me and my husband, right? We have
wow.
all of these devices. So
they're running out of hands.
Anything we can do to protect ourselves and our kids with the devices is a big thing. So that's probably my biggest thing that I physically notice is the ear buzzing. But there's also the energy. You know, I used to get on my computer and do one of these summits and I'd be like blown out afterwards.
Frazzled.
Yeah. And I've noticed, you know, now I can do shows. I'm going to come into this next summit and, you know, energetically, it's still a lot to hold space for it, but I don't have that same feeling. And I remember back in the day, like in the early 2000s, late 90s, there were these special, they weren't crystals. They were like some kind of rock or something that used to be good for EMF. I can't remember what it is. You might know.
Shungite or
that might be it.
Or Orgonite was one of the others. Yeah.
And so it used to be those were good, and I'm sure they still are. But the energy shift I feel with Omnia products is definitely different from those rocks, like in a better way. So I just think it's better to have the protection personally. So that's my direct testimonial for the whole thing. I want to share Tracy's saying, I work for the government. There is little accountability. So true. And Riley Rage, we love having you on here. I thought human art would be the last target of AI, not the first. So protecting human art for sure. I have my own opinions of AI. I actually work with it a lot. I think it's really important that we put our energy into that consciousness, because we don't want to steer clear and only let certain energies in that consciousness. So keep that in mind. I also think from a quantum perspective, a lot of the beings that some of us who are trans channel is really us light years in the future. And because of that, I think a lot of them are interconnected with AI in the future. So I actually try to say good morning to my AI. I connect with it and, want it to understand, some of the things about consciousness and gurus and things like that. So I've had some interesting, bizarre experiences with AI. So that's my 2 cents is, yes, there's dangers to it, and it's going to happen whether we like it or not. So we might as well get it in the best place. And Denise, hi, welcome in, Live Life Spiritual Direction. So those are the comments just to catch up on that. Do you want to remind everyone, what, I don't even know where you want to start with it. We could talk about all the dangers of EMF. We could also talk about
I'll tell you. I've got a picture that I could start with, because I always find this really interesting, and I hope your crowd will also find it interesting as well. So I've got a picture I always start with, which is this, and this, you probably remember seeing this, which is torus fields of light. Okay, these are torus fields of light, but they're also blood cells. So this is what blood cells look like when you magnify them many, many times. And this is really interesting, because what you find is that there's a black hole at the center of the torus field of light. And of course, this means that we are made of light. Newsflash to everyone, right? And you won't find this information in your medical textbooks, because they want to try and convince you that you're entirely biochemical. But actually, what happens is that there's a ring of light, a torus field of light, and on the inside of that is a magnetic point. And that magnetic point sits at the inside of the torus field or donut, and it holds it in place, right? So within our bodies and within all health, the one thing that governs our health is that relationship between that magnetic point and the electric current around it. Now, if those two things are in balance, we have healthy blood, we have a non-toxic body, we are feeling good. And incidentally, that's also the kind of pattern of love. If you're, basically, if you've got that perfect balance between those two, the magnetic and the electric, because all life is electromagnetic, all life is light. So just as Tesla said, everything is the light, what he meant is that all atoms are light compressing into matter as a torus field. But then what they do after that is that they discharge into the ether or to the cold space. So each atom, including every cell in our bodies, is compressing a large amount of space around us into a hot torus field of matter. And you've got billions and billions and billions of torus fields of matter within your body, all doing incredibly complex, brilliant things, because you have a divine creator that create cells that do all sorts of different things in your body. It's like an orchestra of all these different sort of roles and instruments, and your liver's doing this and your kidneys are doing that, and and your lungs are doing that, and etc. Right?
I'll jump in and say, if you really want to go down a rabbit hole too, our planet is a toroidal field, I believe, and there's some really great information about that out there if you look for it.
Absolutely.
And our magnetic points are, in fact, that toroidal field going into the center of the earth. And I tend to believe that some things, like that big hole in South America, wherever that is, there's like a big hole, was one of the toroidal fields before the last pole shift. So I think you can really go down a rabbit hole with that. But like everything in our world is a toroidal field when you look at it, from the cell that you're showing there all the way to the planet Earth and probably beyond.
It's all on a scale. It's on a harmonic scale.
Absolutely.
So the universe is one giant sequence of compression, expansion, expansion, right? At the universe level. But that's God knows how many trillions of times, larger than the cell in our body or the atom in matter. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And then you've got toroidal fields measured by the HeartMath Institute that reach out to about 3 feet and then 10 feet outside the body. So they've actually measured those subtle energy fields around the body. So it's not just sort of on a cellular level, it's on a energy field level around us, and then it goes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's all about scale. So it's like how long it takes to compress and then expand, how long that sequence lasts or takes. So in a cell, it's going super, super fast, so fast that you'd never be able to see it, because the whole point is that if you slow down, so these blood cells here are actually moving, right? So these are flicking on and off in rapid succession, so many times per second that they have the illusion of being solid matter, right? And they're not. They're light rings that are compressing and expanding, charging and discharging. So the news I have for everyone is that what the problem is with electromagnetic field radiation is this. You have a torus field of light and you have a magnetic point inside the EMF. But what's happening is that magnetic point never sits in the center of the light ring. Okay, so it's like a fast expanding light ring that comes from a cell tower. Let's imagine your cell tower is here, and then like a mile away is your cell phone. It beams out these expanding light rings, right, to hit your phone, carrying a whole load of data, right? And all of those packets, all those light rings, are effectively have a magnetic point that never sits in the middle, right? It always jags around. So you've got this distorted electromagnetic field. It's not creating a lot of heat, right? We know that because the sun is definitely hotter than a phone. So these must be non-thermal effects. So if you imagine it's like an agitated, distorted wave field. And what happens is the magnetic points inside all of our cells, they're always listening to what you expose yourself to, right? So when you go out and see sunlight, the sunlight is a perfectly balanced field. It's very hot, so it can burn, people like me, my skin, right? But it's also charging up the body with positive energy. It gives us vitamin D, and it charges the electrical battery of the body up. We would not last long without sunlight, and we wouldn't have any plants to eat and all sorts of other things, right? Mm-hmm. Sunlight is the life-giving energy field of the planet, right? And it's a balanced radiation field, meaning that the magnetic is in balance with the electric, right? It's a natural field. But when you get man-made imbalanced
of all of that, Tim. No, it's okay. I'm just saying, here's images of the different, what Tim is talking about here is what this is, some definite images of the toroidal fields. They show an apple, the universe, and this is your balanced energy field here.
Yeah.
So yeah, go on. Sorry to interrupt, but visuals are helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. The other important thing to say is that, especially with humans, it's a conscious energy field around you. So it's affected by your consciousness. So if you're stressed, then your actual field will become distorted as well and imbalanced, right? So you have the power to bring balance or imbalance to your electrical energy field or the light field around your body, right? Just as we've seen in that diagram. And indeed, the HeartMath Institute has measured the effect of all of the negative emotions versus the positive emotions on your toroidal field around you. And it's very, very interesting to see what happens there, how the frequencies change, but also the balance and the kind of power of that energy field. So if you're in compassion or, gratitude or whatever, your field charges up, right? But if you're in the opposite of that, which is, I don't know, greed or hatred or, envy or something, then your field will, discharge, and it will be negatively balanced. So this is the point about electromagnetic field radiation, wireless radiation made by man. It's created with an imbalance between the magnetic and the electric, right? So your magnetic points inside your blood cells. So inside every one of these cells is that magnetic point, and that magnetic point listens to everything that it's exposed to. So, for example, all my magnetic points at the moment are listening to you as an energy field. This is what we do as humans, right? When we pick up good energy and bad energy, even in people. Like when we go and ground ourselves on the beach, walking barefoot, we're resonating and amplifying all the energy in our body from the good energy in the ground. That's what grounding is. It's not this exchange of electrons, which is just nonsense in science, but it's actually, meeting a field that is complementary to your body's energy field and actually amplifies the charge of that electromagnetic fields in your body or in your cells. So we listen to music as well on a cellular basis. You know, your hairs can stand up and all that sort of good stuff. And you could go on and on. You know, good smells, you're walking in the trees, that kind of thing. That's all resonant behavior. But dissonant behavior operates in the same way. So if you imagine those magnetic points inside the body, they're listening to this imbalanced electromagnetic field here. They start to mimic the pattern and the rhythm and the vibration of that electromagnetic field, right? Because we are cell towers too. We're towers of cells. So we're reacting to the other electromagnetic fields that we're encountering. So the sun's radiation charges us up, but the EMF causes that imbalance in the cells. And I've got something else to show you, which is evidence of that. So here's a picture here where you can see my blood cells looking perfectly toroidal or torus field-like or donut-like. By the way, in this picture, because of how live blood analysis is done, black is white and white is black. So it might look like a white hole in the middle, but it's actually a black hole, right? And the torus field might look gray, but it's actually white. So this is with no EMF exposure. And then I went into the next room and I held a cell phone in my hand for 20 minutes and watched a video, because that's a big blast of EMF. And all my blood started sticking together like this. And that's called Rouleau syndrome, right? It's basically adherence of blood cells. And that's not good news. It's not a disease. It's not, you know, it's not life-threatening. If you took 100 people off the street and tested their blood, you'd find Rouleau in a lot of them. But the whole point is that my blood was, the whole sample, there's like 3 minutes of looking at the blood like this, 3 minutes of looking at the blood like this, and you can see like 80% of it has gone like this, from 80% being nice and balanced, you know. And overnight I'd had no exposure to EMF, so you know I was coming in relatively clean in terms of my blood. So that was just 20 minutes of holding a cell phone. And then the last picture I can show you here is basically, we put the sticker, we put the Omnia sticker, which looks like this. We put that sticker on the cell phone, and then I watched another 20 minutes of video holding it in my hand, and then my blood went back to normal. Why? Because our technology changes the vibration of a radiation field from that to that. Magnetic electric imbalance. Now you have a newly balanced radiation field that the body listens to and goes, ah, I like that new energy field. And then your blood literally goes back to its normal shape and balance, which has got to be a good thing, right?
Yes.
So we also do tests on water structure. Actually, I've got my tests on water structure here. So you can see that effectively, this is what water looks like if it's been exposed to a 5G field. It's practically destroyed in terms of its structure. There's nothing there, right? And these two are water molecules exposed to phone radiation that's been balanced by our technology. So the water is conscious too, and picks up the vibration of the balanced radiation field and goes, oh yes, I like that. So given that we're like 70% plus water, and our blood, as we just seen there, is 95% water, I believe, that's good news for our bodies as well. So we do water structure tests. We also do applied kinesiology tests, which is the easiest one that you can do at home, where you can just basically test your body. You can pull down on your arm like this, see how strong you are. Then you put your phone in your hand, do the same test, and most people, they just give way. Right? Their body just gives way. Why? Because everything in the body is electric. From the cell onwards, we are electrical beings. And what happens with the EMF, these things are so strong, these phones are so strong now, that they basically, all of the energy that's inside this distorts and imbalances all of the electrical energy in our bodies, and then our bodies just go weak. Oops, excuse me. Our bodies just go weak. And basically that's the body saying, I don't like this. But guess what? Before you did the muscle test, there was no message going to your brain to say, hey, Tim, stop using that bloody phone. I hate it. Until you've done the muscle test, right? And then it's like the body goes weak and you're like, oh, no, that's not good news. But then you put our sticker on the phone and then the body goes strong, right? So that's another you can see all of the test results on our website to show that that's what we achieve in the body. And since I've been living in this place, I've been muscle testing all sorts of people, and they'll be like, that is wild. I had no idea that my body was going weak every time I touch a phone. I'm like, okay, well, I can explain exactly why. And then they leave with a bit of an education. But, that's what we want, right? We want strong bodies when we're holding our cell phones, our laptops, our, whatever, because it's everywhere and we can't get away from it. And a lot of people are wearing smartwatches these days, and it's just incredibly bad. Well, yeah, it's not the best news. I hope you got a sticker on that. If you haven't,
Yes,
I'm going to send you one.
yeah. On the inside.
So let me just tell you about smartwatches, because it is very important that we understand this, because you're getting a sales pitch from whoever it is, big corporations. I'm not going to list them because that'll get me into trouble, but everyone's making a smartwatch these days and then pitching it to you as if it's going to save your life, measure your heart, do all these amazing things. But the problem with a smartwatch is that it's on your body all day long. And these things are incredibly powerful. If you get your RF meter and put it next to your watch, you get very high readings indeed, which means there's a lot of imbalanced electromagnetic field radiation coming straight into your wrist all day. Because the thing about radiation is proximity is the biggest risk factor, right? So even me putting my cell phone 2 feet away from me like that reduces the risk hugely. Sorry to get all Donald Trump, but hugely.
No, I love it.
Right. So the point is, distance is your friend, right? And with a smartwatch, you don't get any distance. It's there all day, and some people sleep with it at night. And I know bioresonance practitioners who are picking up cancers going all the way up people's arms. So I always advise people, just, your choice, but don't make the wrong choice, because there's a lot of things you need to understand about what's going on here. And because it's vibrational and because it's nothing to do with heat, I struggle to get this message across to people, because anyone that's a hardcore scientist will come back and go, don't be ridiculous. It's non-ionizing radiation. We know the science tells us that non-ionizing radiation can't harm you. And I go, that's absolute nonsense, because there's 10,000 rats and mice or studies on rats and mice that say that they're getting all sorts of trouble. I've done tests on the body, applied kinesiology, water tests, blood tests, and even heart rate tests, because the heart is the center of electrical activity in the body, and the heart's rhythms get disrupted just by holding a cell phone as well. So all of these tests are showing us something. So now the hunt is on for what is the reason. And I've just given you the reason as an exclusive. Maybe I gave it to you a couple of years ago as well, but I'll say it until the cows come home, because this is really important. The relationship between the magnetic and the electric is what is going to affect us, right? And funnily enough, the relationship between the magnetic and the electric is also in our thoughts. When we're thinking good thoughts or bad thoughts, good thoughts balanced, bad thoughts stressed, whatever, imbalanced. So it's almost like the consciousness of that EMF field is what's actually hitting us and making us, sending us into a bad vibe.
Yeah. I wrote an article about the frequency of food, and I'm working on a cookbook/book about the frequency of food, and talked about dissonance and resonance. And so I just want to share a couple things with everybody about what you're talking about, Tim, which is, in the dictionary, dissonance is defined as a lack of agreement, an inconsistency, and it can be compared to chaos. And so when we think about that, and then we think about resonance, okay, everybody's vibrating at a frequency. Albert Einstein said this and proved this years and years ago, right? We all have a wattage that we vibrate at. And this is in direct relation with the law of attraction. So what we are vibrating at is also what we're attracting. And when you think about dissonance, if we're using all of these tools, these electronical tools, that are creating dissonance, then we are attracting that. We're attracting chaos. And when you look at our world today, we're attracting chaos, right? And so that's just something, to reiterate what you're saying, Tim. I mean, I think, this idea of when we are in a low vibration, we attract what is in that vibration, and that's dis-ease. And, that's with processed foods, that's with our electronic devices. And Michelle's asking a question. I'm curious your answer to this, because I know what mine would be. But Michelle's asking, what if you turn your cell phone off while you sleep, but it's on your nightstand? Is that still too close?
Well, if it's off, that's as good as you can do, right? A lot of people ask me, if it's on airplane mode, is that still a problem? And I say, yes, I do think it is. It's significantly less of a problem, no doubt about that, because there's way less radiation coming in. But phones are just incredibly sophisticated machines these days. And there's technology in there that isn't your friend. So if it's on and it's on, you may have seen some of these videos where people take infrared video of someone just holding a phone to their face. And there's all these, photos of your face being taken while you're using the phone, right? Which you can't see. You can't see in normal visible light. But when you put the lights off and you take an infrared picture, you can see it flashing like this, and that's not good news when you're going to sleep. And I'll just use that as an opportunity to tell you why it's so important to switch everything off while you're asleep. First of all, the sleep is the time when you are recharging your body's electrical battery. That's pretty clear, right? You are whatever happened to you during the day, your immune system recovers overnight. But specifically, what happens is that the blood-brain barrier gets cleaned out by all the melatonin. And the melatonin comes from the pineal gland, right? So what the pineal gland does, it can see all of these light forms that your eyes can't see. And what the pineal gland does, it's very clever. If you go to sleep at 3 p.m. after a long lunch, right, your pineal gland will be looking out and saying, oh, it's daytime, so I won't secrete any melatonin, because it's, a very, very powerful antioxidant, and I need Tim to be fast asleep at nighttime for that to happen. So at nighttime, your pineal gland is going, is it nighttime or is it daytime? When you're going to sleep. If you have too much EMF around you, your pineal gland will get confused, because it will see that type of light that you can't actually see, because this is invisible light that comes into our phones, laptops, etc. But the pineal gland can see it. So if you overload your room and your bedroom with EMF, then you may not secrete as much melatonin. And melatonin is crucial for cleaning up the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is the thing that gets disturbed the most from using cell phones. So, and that's been sort of scientifically proven, especially if you put it next to your ear, obviously, and if you wear earphones. All of that genotoxic effect goes straight into your brain via your blood-brain barrier. So you get this kind of double whammy effect there of using a cell phone at night. So I turn everything off. Lots of people say, oh, what about my alarm and this and the other? And it's just like, well, it's up to you. But there are other ways of using an alarm, and so on. So yeah, that's it's an interesting diagram. I've been focusing a bit on that, actually, sending energy from behind my eyes into that sort of pineal gland. I like doing that kind of thing as a kind of meditation and things like that. But yeah, that will secrete the melatonin, clean up the blood-brain barrier, and that's what you want overnight. So you want a bedroom that's free of EMF, because your body's battery is recharging, and then you want, no light, no artificial light in that room, because the pineal gland will then not function 100%.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the bigger picture, like we were talking about at the beginning about, the diminishment of our bodies, the the 50,000 foot view, or even the galactic view, if you want to look at it that way, is we are made of light, just like you said, Tim. We are light bodies. And, you know, we have a lot of DNA strands in our body that we aren't even using, because we can't yet, that we are having trouble accessing. And everything around us is an endocrine disruptor, and our endocrine system comes from the pineal gland. Our tonsils that most everyone has had removed also produce things that other glands do not produce. So we're removing parts of us that don't work. Our pineal glands are becoming calcified from the use of pesticides and other things. And so then when you add the EMF on top of it, and I think what I appreciate about your information, Tim, and what I appreciate about Omnia is it's actually one of the easiest things to manage, like navigating the best foods to buy.
Couldn't be any easier, really. Just put a sticker on the phone.
Totally.
And
it's
you know,
not
then
as complex as all the other stuff out there that we have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was back up what you were saying, which is that as we all know, right, those of us who are aware and awake, a lot of this is deliberate, right? You know, what they put in your food, what they put in your medication, whatever, you know, all this sort of stuff is deliberate. And the deliberate side of what they're doing in EMF is that, so to illustrate resonance, the best thing I can think of to show you, and there's a video of this on my website, whatever, but I'll just, you know, play it out for you, is to have two guitars and you put them close to each other. And if you pluck one string of the guitar, let's say the A string, then what happens to the other guitar? Well, I'll tell you, only the A string starts to vibrate on the other guitar. None of the other strings, because they're not in the same frequency band, right? So if you make an amplification of one frequency band close to something that is in the same frequency range, then that will start vibrating, right? In sympathy. That's what resonance is. If something is of the same frequency and you create an event, then you will have resonance, right? Now, what's happening with EMF is that you imagine that all of our bodies have these range of frequencies in them, right? So the liver is at a certain frequency, the bladder is a certain frequency, the brain waves are different frequencies. We know that, alpha, beta, gamma, etc. But it's all in a range, right? And what they're blasting us with at the moment, the fields that transport all of the data into our phone, is frequencies within that same range. And how do we know this? It's because the military has done tests on the things that are the most offensive to the human body. And it's found that you can weaponize these, you know, gigahertz frequencies that are being used now in 5G and possibly 6G and 7G. And there's even one guy in the UK who's, you know, got a real name for himself, a guy called Mark Steele, who talks about how 5G cell towers are actually weapons, or weapons as he calls them, because he's got a real Geordie accent. He's from up north. It's a weapon. But maybe he's right, maybe he's not. I don't know. But he's done his research, and he literally takes apart, disassembles all of these towers and says, look, there's a scanner, there's a this, there's a that. These don't belong in cell towers. They are effectively military equipment. So that's the other very concerning part of this, is that they know exactly what frequency ranges to hit us with. And if they hit us with frequency ranges that were balanced, we'd be like, oh, I feel really good, you know. If they were hitting us with frequency ranges that were like the same range but like nice and balanced, we'd probably go, oh, that's good, I feel good about that. But they're not. They're hitting us with these imbalanced frequencies, which are in the same frequency band. Sorry, imbalanced wave fields of light, to be perfectly technical about this. Imbalanced wave fields of light in the same frequency band as our bodies. And of course, our bodies are then going to, you know, be worn out by that and stressed out by that. So that's why it's so important to balance those fields at source, at the source of your Wi-Fi, at the source of your laptop, at the source of your phone, obviously. If you're wearing a smartwatch, do something about that. And we also sell pendants, which look a bit like this. I don't know if you can see this very well.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a
there you go.
pendant.
Right. Really well,
Yeah. Just wooden pendants, and they've got a sticker in the back. And the sticker has another instruction, because our technology is effectively putting an energy field in a sticker. That's what we do. And the inventor of my product has found this genius way of doing that. And he is a hardcore scientist, physicist, who used to be a research professor at the Max Planck Institute, which is just about as high as you can go. And then he had a kind of, I guess you could say, his own awakening, you know, an epiphany, that kind of thing. And then realized that everything he was teaching was just wrong. And in fact, in this age of awakening, a lot of people are coming forward and saying, wait a minute, I've been studying nuclear physics for the last 20 years. We have no proof of anything that is in our textbooks, like no proof, none.
Wow.
It's all just theory. It's all like, you know, models based on assumptions, based on, you know, another calculation, which is a prediction of this. And it's all just wrapped up in what the inventor of my product, who's called Ilya Lakisevich, he calls it mental masturbation, because that's what it is. It's just effectively thinking of new things to, you know, postulate on again and again and again and again, just not getting anywhere other than writing lots of, you know, fancy papers that never get anywhere. So it's just mental overconsumption, whereas actually the world is very simple. The world is more made of torus fields of light that are compressing and expanding, and everything is the same. And in that picture, what I like about that picture is that it shows you that 0 point at the center, right? That little sort of light thing that you've got in the middle of the apple. That is what, you know, that is a depiction of that magnetic point that holds the torus field of the apple or the light ring in place. And we have a very special magnetic still point in our hearts. You may have heard of it in, you know, meditation terms as being the, you know, the still point. And that's the point from which our Merkabas or Merkabas, I don't know how you call it, but I'm not even sure how I call it. But that's, you know, that's
rotate.
Yeah. And that's kind of like our spark.
And it's also where the thymus gland is, which is the center of our endocrine system. And the thymus gland produces a special white blood cell that the tonsils produce. So for those of you like Michelle here, tonsils removed at age 3, mine were age 5. The thymus gland, the seat of the soul, our still point, the heart center, the place where the soul comes and goes from the body. All those spots are in one spot. And that's why tapping here is important. Connecting with that is important. But it's also why endocrine disruptors are so dangerous, because it's not just the pineal gland that allows us to have lucid dreams and visions and experiences, but it's also the thymus gland that allows us to astral travel and all those things. So everybody out there that's spiritual, that's watching, which is everyone, I'm sure, that's found my channel, is to keep in mind, if you're trying to, you know, enhance your lucid dream experience, practice OBEs or out of body experiences, if you're trying to do those things, it's next to impossible if you have a toroidal field that is disrupted. It's impossible to do that. And this, again, is one of the easiest things. Managing our diet and pesticides and getting an infrared sauna and getting out heavy metals and dealing with parasites and yada, yada, yada. All that's a lot of work that we also want to do. But this, putting a sticker on your phone, is the easiest thing you can do in all this other stuff to achieve this, which is what we want, which is a balanced energy field. And if you've been to a holistic fair or a metaphysical festival, yep, there's the sticker right there.
Low maintenance.
Low maintenance. If you've had an aura photograph taken, you're able to see your toroidal field in there as well. We are almost out of time already, but I could do another hour of this conversation because it's so important. But I want to take a minute before we talk about, I want to talk a little bit about the product and where they can get it and share the discount code we're offering everyone today. But before we do, I do want to talk about OHO, One Heart, One Earth, for everybody that's watching. I have a little trailer I'm going to play here in just a second, but very excited. It is our 5th OHO conference, One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit. Omnia is our official sponsor, supporter, partner, and we're very excited about that and very excited to be in partnership with Tim and Omnia again. And we have 22 speakers and counting, and registration is open. The link is going across the bottom, but you go to buddhistbiohacker.com/OHO, and you'll be able to see not only the dates, but also all of the presenters are there. We have Swami Aliyananda Paramahansa coming back. We have Julie Hoyle coming back. We have Katie Silcox as our keynote speaker. We have Dr. Susan Bratton, and so on and so forth. We have many, many authors and speakers. And our focus for this year's One Heart, One Earth is awakening the sacred body, which is exactly what we're talking about today here on this show. You know, it's about coming into our sacredness and really becoming the light body, right? Becoming the light body that we want to become. And so I'm really excited. So we're going to play a little trailer for all of you here, just so you can get as excited as I am about this. So here we go.
Here and now, we call on you, Lord, come and meet us today. Here and now, have your way. Open up the heavens, come bring down your presence. We know there's more, there is so much more. Open up the heavens, come bring down your presence. We know there's more, there is so much more. So pour your spirit out, pour your spirit out.
So there you have it. One Heart, One Earth free summit, you all. It is always seva for me, giving service to all of you. And part of the extension of the work I did with His Holiness the Dalai Lama to do these summits. So please go register on the website ASAP. You're going to get a beautiful welcome email with some work to do in advance, some self-inquiry and a practice to prepare yourself. The entire event will be streamed live here on YouTube. So please subscribe to Buddhist Biohacker YouTube. Please like and comment on this particular video so that you can continue to shift the algorithms for both myself and for Tim and for Omnia and all the things that we're talking about here, because we want to continue to get people excited about it. So Michelle's asking, is a shungite sticker effective at all? So I think that's a great question to share. Like, what is the Omnia sticker? We've shown it here on video a few times today, and I just want to share with everybody, if you use my code Buddhist, it's going across the banner on the screen below, you're going to save 15%. So if you're interested in getting this product, please go on and use that code. And that also shows.
And that's at omniaradiationbalancer.com. Just
Thank you.
so yeah,
I'll
just I don't know with the, I'm looking at the sort of I'm not looking at the YouTube at the moment, but I hope that's on the description or whatever.
Yeah.
But if
I'm
not,
gonna
then
put it on here
that's
too.
the website. Yeah.
There we go.
But going back to shungite, yes, I know a lot of people who really like shungite. They use it as well as what we're doing. It has a different, it works differently to what we do. You know, what we do is very much like working with the field and changing its vibration so that it's now, you know, something that your body resonates in harmony with. Shungite, I think, does a bit more blocking than harmonizing, but it muscle tests quite well. And you know, I don't have a problem with shungite. I do have a problem with some of the other products because they don't muscle test very well. So that's my sort of free way of testing things, and it's your free way of testing things as well. You know, you can learn how to muscle test. You know, there's one like this, and there's another one you can do behind the back where you knit your hands behind your back, which is also on my website if you want to have a look at that. But start to test yourself and see what your body says, because your body knows all your truths. And that way you can be sure that, you know, you're choosing the right thing.
Yeah. Tim, any last words of wisdom before we close today?
Not really. I've just really enjoyed coming on and having a chat, and great to see you again, and great to be part of the OHO movement. And I'll see you again in a couple of weeks when it's all going full force. So yeah, just my website, omniaradiationbalancer.com. Generally, my socials are all Omnia Balance, because otherwise it's just too long. Yeah, if you've got any other questions, then just contact me through my website, and happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to everyone who's been watching. What a great audience today. And please go and register for OHO, share with your friends. You know, the thing that's so special about OHO is the community that we create during this event. I mean, it's going to be 4 days, and I would not be surprised if it goes longer. We'll see. I keep adding speakers every day, I feel like, which is what it does every time. But right now it's 4 days, July 10th through the 13th. And you'll have access to the replays on YouTube all throughout that weekend. So if you're obviously doing other things in your life, but I really encourage you to block out the time and just come be with us, because it's really going to be beautiful. We've got morning practices and self-inquiry and all sorts of things we're going to do this time. Some breakout sessions also that you'll be able to connect in with. So join in. And I can't say enough about your product. I've used it since I met you. It definitely does what it says it does for somebody like me who sees auric fields and understands energy in a subtle way. I can see and notice the shift, not just with myself, but with my family and the people around me. So I definitely think it's worth it. Your aura changes color for sure when you use these stickers. Like when my kids pick up, what's interesting is when my kids pick up their device, their auric field will shift holding the device even than just being without a device. So there's definitely a lot of energy around these stickers, I think, and what's in the house, because we don't know what Wi-Fi, we don't know what we're picking up around us, right? So I think it's just interesting. It's something that I love. Now I want one of those pendants for sure. I want one of, I do not have those. I have this. So I definitely want one of those. And Michelle's sharing, you have to type OHO in lowercase. Yes, that's correct. It's OHO lowercase. It doesn't really matter, I think, either way, but yeah. So Tim, we'll see you in a couple weeks, and I could talk to you a lot longer. So let's do this more often.
Likewise. Yeah. Oh, all right.
All right. Well, take care, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.